साधिके शरण्ये प्रियम्बिके गौरी नारायणि नमोस्तुते.
I could never imagine the same person would end up doing such, humiliation and torture on me. What he did, that trauma is still so fresh in my mind that it gets me like a tremor in my body.
बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम.
आपने कबूल किया?
कबूल किया.
For him, I was just a sexual object where he used to fantasize all his wild fantasies on me. Even if I am in pain, even if I'm crying, even if things are not right, all those unnatural things on me. And he never treated me like a wife.
I now pronounce you husband and wife.
Was the doomsday of my life. I was brutally beaten up, hit 17 to 18 times by boxes, by wooden boxes, by torchlight. He was trying to sexually assault me in all unnatural ways, inserted a torchlight in my private parts.
They say marriages are made in heaven, but then how do you justify violence within a marriage? Is it legal for a husband to rape his wife? Does a woman right away all rights over her body when she walks around the fire 7 times or says I do or qabul hai? When the state refuses to recognize sexual violence within a marriage as a criminal offense, who should a woman turn to? I am Simi Pasha. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll give you a 360-degree perspective on the debate surrounding criminalization of marital rape. Tortured, raped, brutalized, and then literally left in the road to fend for herself.
I was so blindfolded in love and emotionally dwelled up.
This 26-year-old realizes she's fighting a lonely battle. With her dupatta tightly wound around her face, her fingers giving away her nervousness, she recounts the nightmare which was her married life.
I was a very pink person, I believe that husband, family, babies, life, mother-in-law, it's a beautiful life, but the life which I saw was very dark, gloomy, and a life which was all full of nightmares. Those nights which I have spent with him, those tortures which he has meted out on me, actually has shaken my faith in a relationship.
An HR professional with a multinational company in Gurgaon, she met her husband at work and they fell in love. They got married despite resistance from their respective parents. She said yes because she believed in him.
His family never accepted me like a daughter-in-law. For them, I was a person who couldn't satisfy their demands. They always used to taunt me, if my son would have married a girl from a well-to-do family, which his mother might have selected from some of their family members. They said, you would have got this house, you would have got a car, you would have got this. It's not like I did not meet the demands. I even took loans and even I sold off my car, withdrew all my savings from my previous, PF and everything. I did whatever I could do at the best, but still, the demands were so huge and humongous that I couldn't meet any of them.
It wasn't just harassment and demands for dowry from her in-laws that she encountered. Her husband, who had fought with everyone to marry her, soon turned into her tormentor.
Married me twice. So you say fairies, right? So there were 7 fairies. So we took 14 fairies. Not only 7, we took 14 fairies. So all the promises he took on that, he broke everything. Every night was same, but that night was like the worst night I could ever. I saw things in movies and I saw things. I used to get shaken. I never thought I would end up getting the same tortures. Whenever previous nights were also same. He used to torture me, but he used to abuse me, bite me, slap me, hold me by my ears, pull me here and there. somehow I used to always say, "Ki, why don't you love me? Like, am I just for this? Don't you think the whole day I cook for you, I get food for you for office, I clean up your house, I arrange everything as per as you say, I do everything for you. Don't you even feel that I deserve certain respect from you?"
1 year after her wedding, on the night of 14th February 2014, her husband staggered into their bedroom, reeking of alcohol. She had gotten used to being tortured every night, but her worst nightmare was about to come alive.
He was trying to sexually assault me in all unnatural ways, inserted a torchlight in my private parts. I mean, it's very difficult for me to narrate, but whenever I narrate that incident, that whole incident is so painful and it's so terrible that it's just, I feel like right now I'm no more alive. I died that night.
If it's evidence that's needed to prove that she was in fact raped and assaulted, that she was the victim of a criminal act, there was enough to be found on her body. When she was finally able to stand on her 2 feet, she decided to contact the police and get a case registered against her husband. She wanted justice. But little did she know that the law of the land was blind to such offences. The law of the land did not recognize sexual atrocities committed by her husband on his legally wedded wife.
They refused to take my complaint. First, they said that it cannot be taken as a normal complaint because I am putting a case against my husband and the sexual abuses which he has done, which is something. So they kept on sending my written complaint to senior officials. I was not able to understand. They didn't even return me a copy. So I kept on asking them that why aren't you, helping me out? I was crying in the police station for almost 2-3 hours.
It was then that she realized that it would be a long and lonely walk to the gates of justice. She was alone and penniless in a city where power and influence reigned supreme. The cops called her husband to the police station.
He just straight away told in my face that he never loved me. He was just physically attracted towards me. He married me, and henceforth, now he is satiated, and now he doesn't want me in his life. Raining that day, and I was sitting in the, footpath where police station was situated. I was almost drenched. I was crying. There were so many guys, so many people who approached me, just to took notice of me as what happened. My husband just came in his car with his family, his brother-in-law, sister-in-law, and all, like 17 or 18 people were there, and I was alone. And they just went in front of me. I was termed as his wife. I was termed as his wife, his legally wedded wife. He saw me drenched, sitting in the footpath, crying, where 10 other men were staring at me. He, being the so-called protector of my self-respect, he never even took a sigh back and say, okay, she's my wife and she needs me now. There was no one. I was all crying. And that night actually moved me so much. That's the reason I said, no, enough. I need to punish this man. I need to make this man realize that he just can't, just can't use me like that. And then I need to fight for my respect.
What followed was a year-long battle to get a simple FIR registered. Her case was forwarded by the police to the Crime Against Women cell, where she was repeatedly asked one question: have you been a good wife?
A wife is also a woman. When we talk so much about women right, women protection, isn't wife a woman? Doesn't she have the right to come and fight against the injustice which is met none other less than her husband? Why her husband is termed as a demigod?
We live in a society where marriage is seen as a license for sex. But what happens when the sex is not consensual? Why is it that there are different sets of rules for women facing sexual violence outside a marriage and within? Why does the state shy away from recognizing the rights of a woman inside a marriage? Is it because we as a society somewhere still believe that a wife is the property of her husband? Marital rape is recognized as a criminal offense in 2/3 of the world's countries. Poland criminalized marital rape way back in 1932, followed by Czechoslovakia in 1950 and the Soviet Union in 1960. It's recognized as a crime in the US, UK and Israel. Closer home, countries like Nepal and Bhutan also consider spousal rape as a criminal offence. But in India, our legislators believe marital rape cannot be criminalized because marriages are sacred. As lawmakers try to hide behind the God argument, religious experts readily nod in agreement. Marital rape is a concept that religions across the board refuse to recognize.
Sanctity of marriage should be upheld, and family is the root and base of all civilizations. Marital rape as a concept is a misnomer. It can be widely misinterpreted. So I would say, even though there is domestic violence, even though there may be harassment, a law on marital rape is not the solution.
The now focus is the marital rape, and which we're trying to import from the Europe and America. Whatever good or bad thing is happening over there, we are trying to import it. Now the question comes, when you talk about the marital rape, then the question comes for any crime, you need to have a witness. You need to have an evidence. But tell me, in the normal circumstances, man and a woman, husband and wife, they are married. And for a small little things, if something goes wrong, and the woman suddenly complains about it, and then she blames the man for the marital rape. Who is the witness over there?
These are modern problems, and I don't think it had been discussed or came before the writing of the canon law before the church. I suppose these are more, I would say, civil problems, but of course in the church, marriage is not merely a civil contract, it is also a sacrament.
When religion lets you down, you turn to the law. But far from coming to the rescue of women in need of help, the Indian criminal justice system further complicates matters when it comes to offences within a marriage. The legal age of marriage for a girl in India is 18 years. The legal age for consent for sex for a girl is 18, which means that sex with a girl under the age of 18, even if she is willing, is considered as rape. But sample this. It is considered legal for a husband to have sex, consensual or forced, with his wife if she is over the age of 15.
Can it be said that sexual intercourse with a girl 15 years, one of the law commission's reports makes it 16 years, but can you marry if you are under 18? Because there must be consent in a marriage. It is therefore important that all our marriage laws must necessarily indicate consent. It must be a mandatory requirement. It must be a verifiable requirement. And if you too have a process of verification of fairness, of consent and mutuality in the matter of marriage, which is even done in the traditional Islamic marriages, where they ask for the consent of the girl and convey that consent. Consent is at the heart of the system.
The brutal gang rape of a 23-year-old medical student in the national capital on the 16th of December 2012 shook the conscience of the entire country. Cries for justice echoed from Delhi to Bangalore and Mumbai to Kolkata, bringing the government down to its knees. The government was forced to set up a committee to review laws dealing with sexual offences. We had people saying, but what? So the Justice Verma Committee recognized failure of governance as the root cause for sexual crimes and recommended death penalty for rapists, punishment for other sexual offences including voyeurism, mandatory registration of all complaints and criminalization of marital rape.
Marital rape has been viewed as an exception in our country for a very long time. It is one of the exceptions which is contained in section 375 of the Indian Penal Code. The way to respect women, or the way, I wouldn't even use the word respect, the way to accord what is due to women under the Indian Constitution in its preamble is equality. And that equality will mean revision of all institutions, all offences, all hidden, shall we say, areas where we actually permit the denial of equality.
Even as the government accepted several recommendations made by the Justice Verma Committee and passed an ordinance to strengthen rape laws, recommendations on marital rape and review of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act were outrightly rejected.
People were very slow when the report came to deal with the question of abolition of marital rape. And there is a preponderating mindset in our positions and institutions of power that well, why upset the apple cart? I mean, we've been strong so far and it's okay, let this exception remain. And I think the very retention of this exception is a complete anathema of India being a civilized, a republican, democratic society, where what should really bind us in our interpersonal relationships also are some of the most fundamental values of transparency and integrity which are promoted by the Constitution.
Had the panel's recommendation on criminalization of marital rape been accepted, this 26-year-old wouldn't have had to suffer like this. She wouldn't have had to run from pillar to post trying to get a simple case registered. In 21st century India, we as women are still seen as a burden on our parents, and after marriage, the responsibility of our husbands. We've seen several cases of fathers and brothers raping their daughters and sisters. If we're willing to recognize that as a crime, why are we willing to make an exception for husbands raping their wives? Why is the world's largest democracy shying away from providing protection to women within a marriage? Coming up next, should we not criminalize marital rape for fear of the law being misused? The argument being made by politicians and legal experts against criminalization of marital rape is that such a law would be open to abuse and it would bring disrepute to the institution of marriage. The fear is that women would use this law to file false cases of rape against their husbands and even use the provision to blackmail them.
Whether it is section 498A pertaining to cruelty, or whether 325 causing grievous hurt, or 327. So all those sections will be applicable, and a FIR could be lodged possibly under these sections. So the marital rape, as so to speak, already stands criminalized in my opinion, and therefore, and as far as getting it under section 376 is concerned, there has to be a larger debate on this, because it impinges on several traditional value systems, our family system, which has performed pretty well in comparison to what we see in Western countries.
But is this a good enough argument? Any law can be misused, but that doesn't mean that they should not exist. The responsibility then lies in the judiciary to examine each case on its merit and ensure that loopholes are carefully plugged.
Which law is not misused? Dowry law is also misused. Any law can be misused. That doesn't mean you can't make a law. Only it means you must make it with precision, adequate safeguards to prevent potential misuse, and then that can be done. Of course it can be misused, and it can be not only misused, it can be used as an instrument of blackmail at times. But that by itself is not an argument for not drafting a law. It's an argument for drafting a law with precision, with thought, and adequate safeguards in the situation. That's the thing.
So what are the kind of safeguards that such a law should have?
Safeguards, first there should be a clear burden of proof on the person who alleges marital rape. And there should be, prima facie sufficient evidence, not just altercation, change of mood, change of scene, change of fleeting desire one way or the other.
According to a study done by the International Center for Research on Women, 1 in every 5 men admit to forcing their wives into sex. On an average, 1 in every 3 women is beaten or coerced into sex by an intimate partner at least once in their lifetime. A UN study carried out in 2 South Asian countries found that 74 to 94% policemen believe it's okay for a husband to rape his wife.
Sacred institution. No wife ko, then you just force yourself upon your wife anytime. Because it's sacred, preserve it. Don't make the wife subject to such kind of behavior from the husband, which amounts to rape, which means without her consent at a particular point of time, he must have his sexual relations. I don't understand it. On the contrary, because it's a sacred thing, make it sacred. Don't diminish it over the wife. You're completely treating her as a person who should at any time of the day and night cater to a husband's sexual urges and impulses.
The Justice Verma Committee had recommended criminalization of marital rape because it believed that bodily integrity of a woman was a fundamental right, which no one should be allowed to violate. Unfortunately, the government failed to recognize this as an opportunity to make our society more gender sensitive and rejected the recommendation.
My question is that why is it that there is, the existence of violence inside an institution should threaten it in the minds of the lawmakers less than the means of justice against that violence. We all know that domestic violence is very, very widespread in India. No one denies that. We have the data and statistics for that. Can we imagine that where a wife is being battered by a husband, she might not also be raped? Is that really so difficult to imagine or fathom? I don't think so.
Despite stiff opposition from the political class in a society that believes in the superiority of the male gender, women's rights activists are waging a silent war for a more balanced, more equitable society. We all have skeletons in our cupboards. Gory stories of abuse tucked away in some corner of our past. Stories that hurt us and made us cry. But have any of you suffered like that 26-year-old? Did you feel there was no one you could turn to for help? Even if you haven't suffered, would you want other people to suffer such violence? Or are we as a society willing to turn a blind eye to such brutality because we believe marriages are sacred? It's up to you to decide.